Violent Creative Vengeance is the second full-length album from Smoulder, a sort of now split between Canada and Finland, uh, traditional heavy metal band. One that has some heavy influences from 80s United States power metal, epic heavy metal as it crosses over with that, and some traditional doom metal influences, which were more prominent early on. Now, this band is obviously quite popular, and especially the first record caught on with a lot of people for maybe either just the popularity of the personalities involved, the fine, sort of exacting honing in on the niche that their work had done to that point, as well as just a fine quality of work, which really did speak to a lot of really strong traditional references. Now, when I first kind of got into it with that first record, I felt like, well, this is good genre music, and that's not an insult from my point of view. It's not quite idiosyncratic enough to stand out in the subgenre world, and it's still in an amateurish phase. And I say amateurish because the vocals were drenched in a lot of effects, which seemed to be masking, I don't know, maybe some tuneful qualities or abilities that, this is not a huge crime in heavy metal. Maybe on a more professional level, it doesn't quite get there. But in terms of just appreciating classic 80s heavy metal, none of the vocalists were fully there, and it's not about being perfect. The perfect shit is boring, right? The strange variations are where heavy metal gets interesting, especially when you're looking back to the 80s or just in the tradition of it. So in that sense, Smolder had a point of view. They had a lot of really great taste in forming what they were doing, and their style was pronounced. It was strong. It was something to latch on to for a lot of people who were looking for a strong example of sort of epic heavy metal beyond what like Eternal Champion were doing. And in fact, I'd say their sound kind of begins to move in that direction, away from the heavy doom metal sort of Solitude Aeternus feeling grandeur, towards something that's a little bit more approachable, a la Eternal Champion. Now, what we'll do is we'll get into a song first, just to get a sense for how the sound of the band has evolved a little bit. No doubt that progressive speed metal and maybe some interest in faster pacing has informed the variety of this record in general. We don't really get into the more, well, actually, just straight up, there isn't a lot of room to breathe here. The vocalist Sarah Kitteringham had just so much to say. The lyric sheet is full. There's not only is there an attempt to crank up the tunefulness of the vocals and the cadence in a sort of an epic rant on a lot of these pieces, but they also attempt melodies and more involved stories per each song. These are also kind of shorter songs, so what it means is that the vocals really dominate not only the experience, but the general sonic space that they're filling with a lot of, again, heavily processed effects. So while it's an interesting signature for a band like Chevalier, who really do aim for the sort of a dirtier, sort of dungeon-esque register, for this band, it actually kind of clutters the space. And while we do get a lot of interest in terms of the lyrics, and the vocals actually bring a lot of really smart and sort of eccentric nuance to a lot of their phrasing and delivery, it creates a little bit of a cacophony in the production, in the mix, where the vocals are set so central and kind of emanating forward that it occludes a lot of the fantastic guitar performances. The dual guitars are very strong on this record and very much in the tradition of the best of epic heavy metal. They really hit their mark in terms of delivery. Just in general, this is a more charismatic record altogether. I think where they really hit their stride on this record and sort of begin to develop more of a signature is in the rhythm section. And that sounds kind of funny because this is such vocal and guitar driven music, but the bass lines create the right feeling. They really are generating the motion and the adventure in the music, whereas the rest of it creates sort of a tunnel fourth. And I found this neither here nor there in terms of showing off necessarily quite improved skills, so much as better production values in separating some of the instruments while kind of filling in space with a lot of the vocal effects. Again, I don't mean to belabor that point. Um, I like the idiosyncratic feeling of a heavy metal record when the vocalist is different. I think my favorite bands in heavy metal and doom metal are Sirith Angal, Trouble, and even their strangest records are held together by that unique vocal cadence. But here we're getting unique by way of effects rather than unique by way of cadence. Now, the pronunciation is coming in terms, or it's arriving in the sense that again the register is unique. The choice of words is verbose but interesting, and we get there. But the production, again, it just kind of mushes together in a way that is not necessarily epic so much as it is just heavy metal in a traditional sense, full of personality. So a lot of conflicting and sort of chaotic notes for me because of course I liked this album quite a bit. I enjoyed the first one despite some of those same shortcomings in my mind because it's still good music, and this the songwriting is even better on this record. There's so much more catchier pieces. Again, the rhythm section really shines on the catchier pieces. We've got faster pace songs that are very strong, and because they attempt more tuneful and chorus-driven songs or just more standard arrangements, they do land more of those, and it just works in as a good follow-up to that first record. Now, I still do feel like this band isn't, for the level of quality that, the packaging, the representation, all these things, I don't feel like that they're entirely there in terms of selling the performance. Like I'm not, until I've seen the band live, I can't necessarily say, well, that's a solid group, and I see their stylized thing they're doing, because it still feels like a studio project when I hear some of those ticks and the different choices they made in the production values. So I'm definitely, the score would have been a lot higher if there was just a more realistic presence to this band in some sense, so that I got a feeling for where they line up with what heavy metal is doing right now. And definitely there's a lot more power, there's a lot more aggression and purpose behind what they're doing compared to a lot of quite boring poodle rock bands, as I put it. But yeah, it remains to be seen if they're going to bump up above the sort of 8 out of 10 range for me with the rest of their releases. I was impressed, and I really did enjoy this record. So take it as you will. Again, kind of chaotic thoughts for me. It's a little bit better represented in the actual written review. So check that out, and check this album out when it releases tomorrow.